some extent. So I play both diatonic and chromatic. I play quite a lot of chromatic as well, and not just blues, but the chromatic harmonica is very useful for playing blues. I'm sure you're a lot of familiar with people like Little Walter played quite a lot of chromatic. So he maybe started it. George Harmonica Smith then kind of famously influenced some West Coast American players. To pick it up as well. So George Harmonica Smith is a very good blues chromatic player. So it's very common, and it's much easier than you think. Is the first gambit here. So it's like playing third position on a diatonic. It's pretty much exactly like playing third position on a diatonic, except you don't have to bend that one missing note in that blues scale. And in the bottom octave, it's a little bit different than the diatonic because you need more bends. So yeah, it would be useful to get an indication of how many people do play blues chromatic or play diatonic only. Can I have a couple of answers on that somehow?
I've got a chromatic, but I don't play it. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Anyone else just want to chip in and speak?
Same here. I've got a chromatic. Don't know what to do with it. I play almost all diatonic.
Hello, Ben. I've seen Ben's written. Ben gave us a blues chromatic workshop at the Chromatic Weekend a few years ago, so I hope you do play quite a lot, Ben.
Hi, Lena here. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, chromatic. Hello?
Hi. That's Lena, is it?
Yeah, hi.
Hi, Lena. Yeah, good to see you. I'm just going to get my headphones. Yeah, so we've got a bit of a mixture then of people who play and maybe don't play blues, play a little bit of blues. And Lena, I know, plays non-blues sort of stuff as well. So the basics of it are. So I don't. How can you all see my screen? The document I'm sharing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got it.
You can all see it, yeah.
On the chromatic, you've got the lower octave. You've got a 4 blow, and then into a 5 draw. Is there a specific reason rather than using the 4 draw with a button into 5, or even the 5? You've got a change of breath. You've got change of breath instead of having 3, 4, 5 all draws. You've got draw, blow, draw.
Yes, I mean that's Lena speaking still, isn't it? Sorry, I've got a funny. Yeah. Well, as you know, there's different options to play. There's 3. To those that don't know, there's 3 ways to play a C note on a C chromatic on those 4 and 5 holes. You can play it 3 ways, but generally for me that fits on. It fits the pattern of breathing for me, Lena. So that's why I put the 4 blow. I don't actually usually use the 4 blow when I normally play chromatic, but when I play blues, I would, just because it fits the pattern of the scale better. One second.
Can I just ask everyone to stick mute on, apart from Neil, just so we can go through his presentation. Any questions, just put in the chat box. Is that okay?
Yeah. Okay. So that's why, Elena. So on the presentation there, first of all, I put in the notation that I'm using. So there's lots of different harmonica notation. Yeah. So let's not have a debate about harmonica notation now. What we have here is because I'm writing this in a Word document, the easiest way I find is just to use D for draw, or suck, B for blow, and 1 means press the slide in. So that's the notation that I'm using. Obviously the D and B is pretty straightforward, and press the slide in means is 1. Yeah, so we look at a couple of scales to use. So that's the basic place to start. We've got 2 main scales that you'd use playing third position on a chromatic. So the first of them would be to play the blues scale. Obviously we're playing blues music here, and the blues scale is something that you would use a lot. It's not the only thing you would use. So probably better if you all go on mute and just have a go at playing the blues scale along with me. I mean, maybe you don't all, because I don't know what happened if you all play not on mute, but just try that. So we got 1 draw, 2 draw, 3 blow, 3 blow with a slide in, 3 draw, 4 blow, and 5 draw. So that's what the notation is, and it sounds like this. So if you'll just have a quick play through those. Okay. I can hear someone play. It's sort of coming in through. I can kind of hear 1 or 2 people. It sounded good, that one person I heard. I don't know who it was. Oh yeah, by the way, I can see the comment from Mad Dog that you've got a C. I'm assuming everyone's playing a C chromatic, by the way. That's a good point.
Yeah, C.
If anyone's not playing a C chromatic, please shout. The vast majority of chromatics that people buy, certainly the first one,
Or a C,
would be
yeah.
C. Yeah, I do have other keys ones, and I'll get onto that later. But okay, so it's a C chromatic. So that's the blues scale in 3rd position on a chromatic. So that for diatonic players, I will talk a little bit about diatonic because this is very similar. And if you're a diatonic player, a good way to move across to playing chromatic is to play it in what you're used to playing 3rd position. That is if you are used to playing 3rd position on a diatonic. So the blues scale on the diatonic, which I've written here, just below, you can all see me highlighting that. So that is the blues scale on a diatonic in the middle octave on 3rd position. So I'll just play it now.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the 3rd position blues scale, and that is largely what you would use if you're playing 3rd position. Now you can play it in the bottom octave as well on the diatonic, but it means getting quite a lot of bends, which if you are going to play it on the diatonic, you absolutely want to learn those bends, but for now we're not going to worry about that because we're not learning how to play 3rd position on the diatonic really. But again, so that position is apart from the 6 draw bend, so the D1 on the diatonic means bend rather than push the slide in, by the way. That means to bend it. The only difference between playing this on a diatonic and chromatic is that you need to bend that 6 draw 1 instead of pressing the slide in on the middle octave scale above. It would be the 7 blow 1. Yeah, so I'm going to quickly demonstrate on the chromatic, on the middle octave now, not the bottom octave. I don't know what we did last time. That's the chromatic, and this is a diatonic. Okay, so it's pretty much, it's almost exactly the same. So if you're a diatonic player, get your head around the fact that that is the same. Yeah, practice the 2 scales between the 2 of them, and then you can get used to it. If you want to learn diatonic in the bottom octave, that's fine. You can pick that up separately about how to play that scale in the bottom octave, but you need to hit sort of three bends, which are a bit more tricky in the bottom octave, so we won't bother with that now. Okay, so, and obviously I've shown the middle octave and the low octave and the middle octave on the chromatic, so I'll just run up those quickly. So let's start again. So that's 2 octaves, the low, middle, and the low and the middle octave on the chromatic harmonica blues scale. Okay, so that's a blues scale. If you're all maybe having a quick bit of a play through that on the chromatic. Okay, so now we'll talk about the Dorian scale. So I don't know how much you all know about your scales and stuff. So I'm sure some of you know some and some don't know as much. But basically, 3rd position on a diatonic, strictly speaking, is playing in Dorian scale, not in blues scale. So a lot of people would assume that playing 3rd position on a diatonic is playing blues scale. It isn't really. It's playing the blues scale just using the notes we just did on the diatonic. So if we are going to use the Dorian scale, what we're doing is we're using the C scale of a diatonic harmonica, but we're starting on the 2nd note, which is the D. And that gives you a Dorian scale. This is like modal playing, so we won't get too heavily into that now. I'm sure lots of you know this already, but that's playing modally, and so you're just starting basically on the second note of the scale, which is D on the case of a diatonic. And so here, the diatonic scale, on the diatonic harmonica here, you've got, sorry, mad dog, that's good. You don't really need to know this too much, but so I'll just demonstrate on the diatonic. So that's the Dorian scale on the diatonic, which is highlighted on the screen. So if you then play that on the middle octave of the chromatic, starting on the 5 draw, which is the same range that I've just played it on the middle octave of the diatonic. Okay, so it's the same, it's exactly the same notes now, whereas before, well, it's exactly the same notes before, but you had to do a bend instead of using the slide. There are no slides needed to be used to play the Dorian scale on a chromatic harmonica, or in fact a diatonic harmonica. You don't need to take any bends unless you're playing in the bottom octave, where you do need to play bends. Okay, am I going too fast? Is that generally a comment from everyone? I'll just stop pausing. How's that, Sam? Mad Dog's just put, he wants me to slow down a bit. How's everyone? I need some sort of feedback. Sam, how's it going?
Well, I've got you on speaker view, so if I put it on gallery view, then you'll become Diddy, whereas at the moment you're very big on the screen. So if anyone can, yeah, in the notes it's saying okay, it's okay, but then someone says I agree, please slow down a bit. So.
Yeah, I'll slow down a little then. Obviously people have got different knowledge and ability, so it's kind of hard to cater for everybody. So all you need to take from this, I don't want to get too technical, but basically there are 2 main scales that you'll use to play third position, both on the chromatic and the diatonic, and that is the blues scale, which we played earlier, and the Dorian scale, which we just played. And the scales are shown here. Okay. So a lot of people then would say, well, which scale do you use? You know, I'm confused. Which one do you use? And the answer to that is you kind of use both. You can use the notes from either of those scales when you're playing third position, either on the chromatic or diatonic. So don't worry about it too much. Just get used to playing up and down those 2 scales. And then as you play more and you practice more, you'll kind of get familiar with the fact that you can use some of the notes on the Dorian scale as well, which in the case of playing third position is really playing the 4 draw and the 6 blow on the chromatic. But I won't go any more into that because it's probably just going to confuse you even more. Okay, so 2 basic scales, okay? And as I put here, most of the time you will use the blues scale. So learn the blues scale first and practice that. Also on the diatonic if you just want to play third position diatonic. But then just kind of be familiar with the Dorian scale as well. Okay, right. So I think you've probably all had a bit of a play through the scales. Just a little bit more technical talk, and then we'll do some playing. So what key are you playing in is the next question. So as we've said, I think already, on the chromatic, you would normally play in the key of D when you're playing a blues. So the vast majority of songs that you hear on the chromatic blues are in the key of D or D minor. We'll get into that in a minute. So, and that is because you're playing in third position on a C. So if you know about your position, same on a diatonic, if you're playing third position on a C diatonic, you're playing in the key of D or D minor, depending on which scale you play. So you're playing in the key of D on a chromatic. Now, as I say, a lot of songs are played in that key when you hear a lot of the blues harmonica chromatic songs. Okay, and the next thing you can do on the chromatic is you can hold the slide in all the time, and then that gives you the key of E flat or E flat minor. So you'll hear quite a lot of blues chromatic songs also played in the key of E flat, because that's what they do. It's just literally hold the slide in. Now, there's a slight difference to that because you do need to let go of it for one note, but we'll get onto that in a minute. So the songs I'm Ready by Little Walter is played, the Muddy Waters song where Little Walter plays Chromatic, is played in the key of E flat. So if you want to try playing along with some songs afterwards, I'm Ready is a fantastic song. He gets amazing sound, as he always does. Big, amazing sound. He's playing in the key of E flat, so you need to hold the slide in if you're playing along with I'm Ready by Muddy Waters, with Little Walter playing chromatic harmonica. Okay. On diatonic, if you want to play in third position, as I'm sure all you diatonic knows, the beauty of diatonic is all you need to do is swap your diatonic, and then you instantly change key, right? So if you wanted to play, if you want to change key on a diatonic, obviously you need to change key, and you need to work out what the third position note is. So for example, if you want to play in the key of E, you would use a D diatonic because it's one tone up from the key of the harmonica. Okay, so we won't go too much into that again. I don't want to get too heavily into diatonic playing. Okay, so we'll quickly now play the blues scale in E flat. So I'm highlighting on the screen, if you can all see that. So let's do the, we'll do the lower octave, because if you're not used to, playing the chromatic, it's a bit easier to navigate if you start from the lower octave. So I'll just play now the scale of E flat blues scale. Okay, so it's exactly the same as the D blues scale, except you need to, you hold the slide in the whole time, but you need to release on the 3 draw, whereas on the D blues scale, you need to press the slide in on the 3 blow. So that's the only difference. Okay, so to stop me talking a minute, can I have a volunteer to play me the E flat blues scale? Does anyone want to go for it?
Just type in the box, because all I can see is Neil. So, any volunteers?
Come on, Arthur, I'm looking at you.
I'll have a go.
Gordon.
I'll have a go.
Yeah, go for it. Very good, very good. So that's the E flat. As I say, if you want to play along with quite a few blues chromatic songs, they will be in that key because it allows them to change the key easily by more or less just holding the slide in. Okay, so now I'll play a little bit and just play some example stuff, and I'll play these riffs so that you can all have a go at playing them, and I might ask for some more volunteers. I'm looking at you, Sam. Okay, so starting off on the first riff, which is not what I just played, we have this riff. Okay, so I probably won't expect too many of you to get this too right. This is just an example that afterwards you can take these riffs and you can just practice the sort of sounds that you want to get when you're playing the chromatic. Okay, so this riff just more or less moves down the scale, the blues scale, without the slide note. Oh, sorry, let me just check my... Sorry, that's it. Any volunteers to have a go at that one? It doesn't quite just go on the scale because I changed it, remember, when I wrote that one. Any volunteers? I'd volunteer on that one if I was you, because that's the easiest one.
Okay, I can try.
It sounded good. Your audio just cut. Just play that again. I can only just hear you, but I just about heard it. That sounded fine.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. Can I increase the... So that's a good idea. I will do that.
No.
I'll work out how. I'm just going to increase the font size as per the request. Is that better?
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds pretty good.
Thank you.
Thank you for volunteering. Okay, so next one. So this one, this is the second one. Sorry, if you could just go on mute, everyone, a moment. You can have a go when. So this is the second one here. So the first riff started on the root note at the top. So the 9 draw is the D note. That's the root note at the top. So this note here starts on the 5th of the scale, which is the A, and then it moves down to the root here, and then it goes down below the root to the 3 draw, which is the A, the 5th, and the octave below, and then it goes back up to the root. So the reason I'm saying it like that is that you, and I don't know how you'll think about this, but you kind of want to think of it like that, like a kind of map that you navigate where you're playing on the harmonica. It's the same when you're playing the diatonic. So I put some more information on this further down, but you want to be able to navigate it by knowing where the root note is, which is the 5 draw and the 9 draw, and then knowing where the sort of 5ths and 3rds and things are, and that helps you navigate and understand where you are. So this riff here, as I say, starts on the 5th, goes to the root, goes down to the 5th and lower octave, and then comes back up and finishes on the root. Okay, so any volunteers? I'm sure Elena can play this. Very good. Very good. You sound very bluesy on that CX12 there, Elena.
My new one.
Have you been
Love
keeping it in that beautiful Seidel warming case?
I got a new one. They sent me a new one.
Oh, why wasn't it working?
Yeah, the last one. No, the one I bid for in the auction. I had lots of problems with it, unfortunately.
Ah, oh, that's why they gave it in the auction.
From the get-go, and I said somebody would fix it for me if they sent me a heating element. They said if I sent them the carriage costs, they'd sent me a new one. So I have a case, an
Brilliant.
empty case, if somebody wants it.
Okay.
This is over. You're welcome to have it.
No,
But
that's
so
cool.
I've got the new one. It's just the
Okay.
sanitizing it outside at the moment.
Okay, so there's a couple of riffs. I'm looking at the time. I'll move on. I won't play the rest of the riffs. They're just some riffs that you can use to practice yourself. I'll just play them myself, but I won't ask anyone else to play them. So. Sorry, should have practiced them before. I wrote them these the other day. So again, just briefly, this starts on the 5th. It goes up to the root, and then it goes down to the root again. This one is the first one which has actually got the slide button in it. So so that is starting on the bottom of the root, the first note in the octave here, sorry, in the scale. It goes up, and it's the first one which uses the slide, which is the 7B1 here. So that gives it a certain bluesy sound. That's a flat 5th sound that you get in the blues scale. So,
could I ask a question?
Yep.
Oh, thanks. I had a job. I was muted and I didn't realise it. Can I record this?
It is being recorded, so I don't think Sam's going to share it. Yep, go on, Sam.
Yeah, all the sessions are recorded, so they'll be made available on the website in next week or so.
Oh, okay, that's great.
Right.
Lovely. Thank you very much.
Okay. So, and then there's just one scale, one lick here, which I've also put in the Dorian scale, so you can practice that. So the difference with the Dorian scale, one of the differences is it's got 4 draw in it and 6 blow, as I mentioned earlier on. So they are notes that you would maybe use extra to the blues scale. I'll just play this quickly. It's got a more, sadder sound. It's a minor scale, so those minor notes come out a little bit more in that scale. So that's just an example of Dorian scale. What you could also do is a bit of homework, if you fancy, is if you could try playing these licks in E flat, which is very easy for the top 3 because all you literally have to do is hold the slide in. But it is different for this 4th one because you would then need to make sure that you use the correct note without the slide. So I'll let you work that one out yourself by what I wrote above. Okay. Right, so quickly on to some other stuff. Someone put on here that they've got, oh, Lena, I see, that you've got 14 and 16 hole chromatic. So this is a 16 hole chromatic. This is a 12 hole chromatic. As you can see, and some of you probably know, they are different sizes. The 16 hole chromatic has got an extra octave on it, on the bottom. And that is a low octave. So that is, you'll hear a lot of blues chromatic played on 16-hole chromatics. Now you don't need to have a 16-hole chromatic. You don't need to go and buy one if you don't own one already, but it's useful to have because particularly if you want to play octaves, which we'll talk about next, they're good for that, and it's nice to have that low sound from the 16-hole. But I would normally play a 12-hole myself because I'm so used to playing the 12-hole, and it's easier to get around on the 12-hole. The 16-hole is harder to navigate. Okay. So now we've got these 2 scales, the blues scale and the Dorian scale. It's kind of like what do you do with that is the next question. And what you do is they're just, your basics, and then you have to use those to get that bluesy sound. So to get that, I put 4 techniques you can use to get a bluesy sound on a chromatic. And the first of that is to play octaves. So to get an octave, for those of you who don't know, you need to play the D, for example, the D note, the root note, on either side of your tongue. So I'm sure lots of you know about tongue blocking and playing octaves on the diatonic. But to do this, you have to block what is the holes 2, 3, and 4, and play holes 1 and 5 on the chromatic. Now this, when you're not used to it, this is a lot harder than it sounds, because if you play octaves on the diatonic, which a lot of you will do, of course. Oh, upside down. That sort of sound on the diatonic, it's a lot smaller. To get it on the chromatic, you've really got to stretch your mouth. It's quite a big stretch. So it'll take some practice. Can anyone play octaves on the chromatic?
Never tried.
Yeah, let me hear it.
I have just started trying.
I'm not sure, Elaine. It's hard to tell with the audio quality in here, but it sounds like possibly you're playing 1 hole too short. Oh, you might not be. It's hard to tell. Yeah, that's it. That's it. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, so to do that, something you just have to go and practice. But what it gives you is that, I mean, my favorite chromatic blues harmonica song is Blowing Like Hell by William Clark, and he plays that on a 12-hole B flat chromatic, and most of the notes he's playing on that are from octaves, but not every song uses octaves all the time, but they certainly use it some of the time. that sort of sound on Blowing Like Hell by William Clark, if you know it. Okay, so the octaves are one thing. So the next thing to do, which is quite easy to do, is just to slide down the chromatic. Then you get this sort of sound. Now it works. You don't want to do it all the time, and you certainly don't want to go. So you can do that, and you do hear that being played sometimes. But you want to put it in between your other playing. So a song called Heartburn by Rob Piazza, which is probably a good time for me to plug my current podcast. I've just interviewed Rob Piazza on my podcast, Happy Hour Harmonica Podcast, which some of you will see on the National Harmonica League. I will type it into the thing. And Rob Piazza is, I interviewed him the other week. And I talked to him quite a lot about his chromatic playing. So I've just typed it into the message if people want to find it. You can find it on the internet, or you can find it on your podcast player on your smartphone. So Rob Piazza plays a lot of chromatic blues, and he plays a song called Heartburn, which is a very good chromatic song as well, played on a C 12-hole chromatic. So you can check that. He does a lot of slides in that as part of the melody. So it's quite an interesting one to hear how he plays that if you want to try and practice sliding down the chromatic. The reason the sliding down the chromatic works so well is because all those notes on the draw are all notes that you can use from the scales above. Okay. The next one is to get a fat chord sound, which is, so if you play all the notes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so all you have to do, you don't even have to play 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can just play 1, 2, 3, 4 maybe. But really, basically, open your mouth as wide as possible and just breathe in. Yeah. Now this sounds particularly cool on the 16 hole. In that bottom octave, takes a lot of breath. So what you'll do when you're playing is, so again, Blowing Like Hell goes, and then he'll just play that chord at the bottom. So you just kind of put it in, or you hold it like that for a while. So we'll have a beautiful, nice draw on those big fat chords you get on the chromatic. And they sound particularly awesome when played through a tube amplifier when you're playing blues or chromatic, because you get a lovely, massive, roaring, fat sound out of those big fat chords when you're playing through a tube amp. So fat chords are great. And I'll ask a question now, and you can, Sam will give the winner the correct answer a prize, won't you, Sam? which is what you're playing. I've sort of written the answer down, but what you're playing when you draw on those all those notes. Any answers? It says on the piece of paper, but I want a more specific answer than that. What chord are you playing when you draw on all those holes on the C chromatic?
C.
Nope.
D, F, B, A.
D minor 7.
Almost. Very close.
Dominant 7 then.
D minor 6.
Yes, a D minor 6 is strictly speaking the correct answer. Well done. Was that Trevor? Well done, Trevor.
I didn't say 6. No, someone else said 6.
Oh, so whoever said 6, you were correct. You're correct. You're playing a D minor 6 chord. So you've just won a Ferrari from Sam. That's fantastic. It's only it's only a little toy one.
Neil, it was me who said it, Neil. So.
Oh, was it? Oh. Well, you can just keep driving the Ferrari you already own, Sam. Okay, so that's right. You're playing strictly speaking, a D minor 6 chord, because the B note, which is the 4 draw, is a 6 in the scale. But so it's a minor chord. More as much as anything worrying about it's a 6. It's a minor chord basically. But that chord will work. Sorry, could you go on mute if you're not? So it's a minor chord. That will work over blues as well because it's got a flat third in it. So again, let's not get too technical. So the last trick is to do the tongue trill, which is something again you do on diatonic. It sounds like this. So that is just wiggling your tongue quickly side to side, which is a technique which I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with doing in diatonic. So yeah, you just play from side to side. You just go from side to side like that. Okay, so that's another one. And all these things, the octaves. It's worth making this point now, and then I'm going to let us do some playing for the last 7 minutes. All these, and maybe some questions. All these techniques, they all kind of work together. And by playing octaves, you can throw all these techniques in together. You know, when you're tongue blocking, which if you play tongue blocking on the diatonic, all those techniques kind of work together. Okay. So I am conscious, Sam, obviously, that you said people want to do some playing. So how do you suggest that we do that? I'll just very quickly run through the rest, and then we'll do some. I'll put some stuff here about 12-bar blues and what the root notes are and stuff. I talked about that a little bit earlier on, which is here, understanding where the root and the fifth and stuff is. Then I put some example songs that you can listen to. Rob Piazza, I mentioned. 5 Long Years is the other person I interviewed on my podcast recently was Kim Wilson. So he plays. Little Walter, I can't interview him anymore, unfortunately. And George Smith. James Cotton plays some great chromatic harmonica. And William Clark, that's my favourite song I mentioned. But he plays that on a B-flat chromatic, so you won't be able to play that unless you want a B-flat chromatic, or you use something like Amazing Slowdown where you can change the pitch of the song, which you can do, so you can play along with that. And some non-blues players there, if you're interested in the chromatic. And then finally, I've just put on St. James Infirmary, which you can play on a chromatic, and I've written the tab for it underneath. Just to note that this song is actually not in either of the 2 scales that I've talked about. It's actually in natural minor or Aeolian mode. It's usually the bass, but you can still play it on a C chromatic. But anyway, if you want to play St. James Infirmary, that's a nice song to learn on the chromatic, which isn't too difficult. So Sam, what do you think the best thing to do for the last 5 minutes?
Well, I think if people, if we do it orderly, if they want to ask a question, just unmute and we can just see how that goes, can't we?
Yeah.
So if you've got any questions, pipe up, unmute and pipe up.
Or you can play if you want. If you want a quick play, and you know, I can hear you and say something, and we can all hear you. That's
Hi, Neil.
too.
Did you demonstrate the tongue trill again?
Yep. So. So it's the same as on a diatonic, Arthur. You would certainly play that on a diatonic as well. So it's
the same as this tongue flutter. No.
Well, flutter. Do you mean flutter by sort of going on and off and sort of up and down?
Yeah.
No, not the same as that. It's side to side that I'm doing there, and the reason it's side to side is then you're unblocking the hole either side very quickly. So I'm trying to slow it down. It's kind of hard to play it slow, really. You kind of. So yeah, thanks, Arthur. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Someone's asked about bending on the chromatic. So yeah, you can type your messages into the IM as well. That's probably better in many ways. Thanks, Javier. So you can bend the chromatic a little bit, but you can't bend it fully like on a diatonic, and that's mainly because there are wind savers in the chromatic. And as Lena will testify to you, the wind savers are the bane of every chromatic player's life, and we all hate them with a passion. But they have to be there because they serve a very important service, a purpose, and that's so that the harmonica doesn't leak lots of air, and then it wouldn't be very responsive then. So it traps the air from the other when you're playing either the blow or the suck. So wind savers mean that you can't properly bend. You can't properly bend the chromatic, but you can bend it a little bit. So you hear there when I do it on the 7 drop. It's easy for it to choke like that, and then it cuts out. So you can only bend it a little bit, and I don't know exactly how much, but you can probably bend it like a quarter of a tone or something like that. Yeah, the notes are available, John. I think Sam has put them on the website. He'll probably say that at the end, or yeah, they're going to go onto the website, the notes. So yeah, you can only bend it a little bit, and as someone's just mentioned there, Brendan Power does talk about removing wind savers, and actually he has actually produced an all bending chromatic which allows you to bend, and I haven't tried one of these, but I know Patrick Byrne, a friend of mine who's involved with the NHL, he has just bought one of these from Brendan. So I don't know exactly what he does, Brendan, but I think he's possibly removed all the wind savers and he's modified the harmonica so that you can bend it more readily, or you can just remove 1 or 2 wind savers for 1 or 2 holes, and that will allow you to bend, say, the 7 draw. But again, that would be not something that, strictly speaking, you necessarily want to do to your chromatic, because if you do that, then you can't play it in other ways. If you just want to play it for blues, you might want to try it, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend that you suddenly tear off all your wind savers, because they are there for an important reason. But yeah, you can check out Brendan Power's all bending chromatic. That's not the Asia bend, Lena, that you just put on. That is something a little bit different, but that is something, yeah, that I don't know if you mean that, but yeah, that is something that Brendan obviously is a mad genius of inventing harmonica changes. Okay, so, oh, you did it on your cheapest. Derek's just saying you did it on his cheapest chromatic, and apart from bit of merit, it bends like a diatonic. So yeah, thanks for that. I've never actually tried it, Derek, because I play chromatic properly, you see, so I kind of don't want to destroy my chromatic by turning off all the wind savers, but I do have enough of them to just try it, so maybe I should give it a go. Any more questions? And no, I'm pretty sure Little Walter didn't remove his wind savers. I saw that question. Maybe he did on 1 or 2, but I don't think so. Okay. Are we out of time, Sam? Do we stop now, or?
It's actually spot on. So, yeah. Oh, what other positions are good for chromatic? That's from Javier.
Well, so when you talk about positions on the chromatic, then that's when positions are a little bit like kind of funny diatonic harmonica speak. Now, positions are accurate, and you do use those for lots of harmonica. Lots of musical instruments do talk about positions, but really, positions are kind of something that diatonic players will talk about, whereas really what you're playing is different scales, and when you play chromatic and you kind of understand more the music side of it, then I don't really think of it in positions. But what you can play any blues scale on a chromatic. That's a good point, actually. I was going to put this on the sheet. For example, you could play in the key of G by playing a G blues scale. So that's a G blues scale. So I could quite happily, and that's quite easy to compare to a C chromatic because it's quite similar to how you would play a C chromatic. And then there's an E blues scale. So there I'm playing in the key of E on the chromatic. So you can play any key on the chromatic. That's a big advantage of a chromatic, but you don't get the same bluesy bends that you get in a diatonic, and maybe you do if you take the wind savers off, but not in the same way. You're never going to get the same powerful blues bendy sound out of a chromatic that you're going to get out of a diatonic. So, but you can play any scale. I'll now attempt the scale of A just to prove my point. So that's in the key of A. So yeah, you can play blues in any key on a diatonic. You don't have, but you're not playing it in third position if you do that. That's an important point. What we talked about above the two scales of blues scale and Dorian scale, that's kind of third position speak in diatonic. If you start playing different key blues scales on the chromatic, then you're not playing it in third position. Is there a diagram? So someone's asking, is there a diagram that shows how the notes on the C chromatic match up to the holes on the diatonic? I was going to put a picture of the notes on, but I decided not to do that. But I don't know, I haven't found one side-by-side comparison, but yes, you can obviously find all that information on the internet pretty easily. I'm sure we can sort that out, Sam, if people particularly want that. That information is available, of course, on the internet, as everything is these days.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Neil. Say, as a non-chromatic player, I've found that really, really, really interesting. Should we give him a clap with our with our mics off?
I don't work for the NHS. Come on.
There we go.
That's right.
This video will be available on the website soon, as will Neil's Word documents. And if there are any questions for Neil, how can people get in touch with you, Neil?
Yeah, yeah, I'm happy if people want to email me. It's probably the best way. So yeah, my email's probably best to use. I've got so many these days. Neil.Warren. Well, actually, no, that one. In fact, I'll put in the NHL gig list one.
Okay, can you just type that in?
Yeah. So if anyone wants to ask me any questions, I'm happy to answer. If anyone's got a burning desire to have some online lessons, I'm sure I could sort that out. But yeah, I'm happy to answer a couple of questions. If send it to that email, thanks.
Okay, I mean, I can keep the if I turn it on everyone on mute. I'm going to nip away for a couple of minutes, but are you able just to hang on for another 5 minutes or so before Simon starts? To
Yeah,
answer
sure,
questions?
Yeah, for sure, yeah. Happy to do that. Okay.
I'm gonna click on unmute and run.
You're going to the little boys' room, are you? We all know where you're going. We all know where you're going.
Remember, Neil, this is being recorded.
You can delete that bit.
Right, I'm going to unmute all now. Okay, and just to say, the next session starting in 10 minutes is with Simon Joy. I saw he came in about 10 minutes ago, and that's on the tremolo. And again, I don't know a great deal about tremolo, but I'm really, really sort of interested to hear more. So I know it's very bright sunshine outside, but please stay for Simon's, because I'm sure we'll be learning a lot from that. So see you in 10.
Excellent. Thank you. Thanks, Neil. Brilliant.
Pleasure. I mean, people might actually Pete Hewitt's on. Hi, Pete. People might want to disappear and have a break if they're staying for the next one, so that's fine. But if you want to stay for 4 more minutes while Simon appears, I'll just play St. James Infirmary. So feel free to disappear and have a break. But if anyone wants to just play along, and I'll just play St. James Infirmary so we can just finish off with a bit of playing. So it's probably best if you go on mute, because otherwise I get tons of it won't be in sync and it just doesn't work. So if you go on mute, but just feel free to play along, and I'll just play St. James Infirmary for a little bit until Simon arrives. I'll just keep playing it. The important note, the only note you need to use the slide for is the 3 draw with the slide in. That's the only note. Okay, so so if you're not, could you please go on mute? It's just it's quite difficult because I get different sounds coming at me. I'll just carry on playing it. I can hear some birds singing. Sound very lovely, but if you could go on mute, thanks. So that's more or less it. as written. I'll just play it now and I'll just change it up a little bit. In fact, first of all now I'll play it by using octaves so you can get the sound of what the octaves is. And I'll start putting a few different effects in, such as chords and a few slides and stuff. Okay, so... So I'm now not playing exactly as written, but you know, you just kind of basic melody. Does anyone want to go?
I will.
So if everyone else can go on mute and one person can have a go, I'm not sure who that is because I can't really see very well. And by the way, someone asked a question where we get for that. What's a decent chromatic? Is a good question. There's quite a few brands, of course. I personally play Hohner Toots models, but they've got the problems because you can't unscrew them. CX12s are quite good for playing blues because they've got these plastic covers and they're kind of quite loud. And so CX12s are good. Or Sadles do some. I mean, there's quite a lot. I mean, I think if you buy a decent Sadler or a decent Suzuki or a decent Hohner, then you know they're all fine. Okay, who wants to have a go at playing? Okay, thank you, Michael. That's pretty good, pretty good. So one thing I would say that, just as a comment on that, what you've got to be careful of, and we've talked about being able to bend the chromatic. What you've got to be careful about is really you don't really want to bend the chromatic very much because it doesn't bend in that way very well, and the notes in the scale that you're playing don't really call for bends. So you bend that quite a lot, Michael. So I'd say try and play the chromatic a bit cleaner. It's not diatonic. You can experiment with taking the windsavers off, but really that is a different ball game. Yeah,
touching windscapers.
Yeah, you don't really want to be bending it a lot. You want to try and keep it as clean sound.
Okay.
So anyone else want to go? Very good, Gordon. Yeah. So that was excellent, Gordon. That was excellent. I think I don't know. I mean, it sounds like you played the chromatic quite a bit there, but I don't know if you already do them. But some of the other techniques I talked about playing octaves and slides and chords and stuff would really. Can you play that stuff now?
I can try.
Yeah, let's have a quick listen trying that.
I'm not very good at octaves.
Yeah.
Wide now.
Who is?
So yeah, thanks, Gordon. I don't know if I was hearing you or the other person. Oh, are we done, Sam? Do we? Sorry, Simon's waiting
Yeah,
to come
I
on.
think,
Is he?
I think
Yeah.
that's better wind up now. Will you come back again, Neil?
I didn't hear that, Sam. I
Hang
can
on a
still hear
sec.
someone playing. Yeah, probably I'm gonna mute everybody. You're on mute, Sam. Sam, if you're trying to speak.
I was trying to mute everyone else and muted myself. What I was saying was, would you come back and do another one at some point in a few weeks?
Yeah, pleasure. Yeah, of course. Or on Chromatic or other stuff.
Well, I mean, Chromatic. It seems to me that there's, with all the questions today, that there's a lot more, more you can share. So perhaps on the Chromatic, and
Yeah.
I've put your email address in the chat. So if you can get in touch with Neil, just let him know the sorts of things that you want to talk about. Then that's fine.
Yeah, no, happy to, Sam. Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Perfect. Perfect.
Okay, thank you all. Enjoy the tremolo. I'm gonna have to disappear now, but enjoy.
Thank
Bye,
you.
all.
Perfect. Well done. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.